Welcome to Stormwater Drainage Solutions. In this video, we're going to be showing you how to install PVC drainage pipe for yard drainage, and we're going to be showing you the best practices and how to install it. So on this particular install, we're going to be putting a catch basin, a 12 by 12 catch basin in this low point right next to the home where the channel drain from the pool deck dumps out. Now, this home is also going to be getting an addition. That's why all the sod is removed in this area over here. So that home is going to get extended. Now, all the water wants to travel to the low point right there in the corner, and particularly where that channel drain dumps out. The pool deck also, when that was installed, the majority of the water that gets into that deck drain dumps out where we're going to be putting our catch basin. So we're going to use a 12 by 12 catch basin, 4-inch SDR 35 PVC pipe to discharge it. Now, whenever you're installing PVC pipe, I would highly recommend that you use both primer and glue on all of your joints. Some people think that you don't need to use the primer and you can skip that step and just use the solvent cement, the glue. I would recommend against doing this. I would always recommend using the primer. What the primer does is it cleans the plastic, so it gets dirt and debris and oils from your skin off of it. So it cleans it, and then it also begins to kind of soften it and prep that plastic to be melted by the glue. Because when you are solvent cementing these pipes together into the fittings, what you're actually doing is you're melting the first top layer or so of PVC plastic. So you're melting the plastics together. So the primer essentially starts that process and starts to prep it. And then the solvent cement, that melts it the rest of the way, and then it bonds the two plastics together. So always use primer before your glue. Now for the catch basin, we're gonna go ahead and just cap off the two pre-made holes in it. We don't use these a whole lot. We like to make our own holes. That way we can have the elevation that we want on our catch basin, as well as placement for our drain line. And in this particular situation, we want to place our pipe higher up on this catch basin because we are at such a low point here that we need to try to gain as much fall as we possibly can at the start of the run with our pipe. That way, by the time we get to the end of the run with it, that system will be able to drain out and discharge, and that catch basin will be able to flow that water nicely. So we want to have that pipe as high as possible in that catch basin on the start of this particular run. Now, as we lay our pipe, we're going to follow it with levels the whole way through and through. We want to make sure that we have at least 1% slope on our drainage pipe here. That way it really gets the water to flow. Now, at the beginning of this run, it's going to be much more than 1% slope because like I stated earlier, we have that pipe as high as possible on that catch basin so that we have a lot of fall starting off. Now, we will raise the pipe as we go, but we will be mindful to always make sure we have at least 1% slope. That way the pipe drains out. So here, when we're making this turn, we're not just going to go ahead and hit it with a hard 90. We're actually going to just use two 45s for this, and we're going to space the 45s out. That way it's a smoother transition to allow that water to flow around this 90-degree bend a lot smoother. You can use a long turn 90 for this application in yard drainage. You pretty much never can do that with sanitary systems. In sanitary systems, you always have to use 45s and 22.5s, and they need to be spaced out properly depending on your municipality and whatever code that you have to follow. In yard drainage, those rules can be bent and broken a little bit because granted, you're not flowing solids with yard drainage. You should pretty much only be flowing water. Maybe some debris might get into that system like leaves and grass clippings, but that system is not flowing toilet paper and other solids. You know, it's a yard drain. It's not sanitary. So it should mainly just have water in that system. You can see I'm using my primer before I use the solvent cement to glue these joints together. And that T fitting that you see there, so that's a two-way clean out T, and we're going to have that right before the 45-degree bend. That way you have an access point in the middle of the system, roughly. This is roughly the middle of the run, and it has an access point right before these two 45s. That way, if God forbid the system ever does need to be jetted or cleared of a clog that may develop in this area, you'll have an easy access point for this. So you'll have three access points essentially on this system. You'll have the catch basin as an access point. You'll have this clean out that's roughly in the midway of the run as an access point, and then you'll have the discharge end as an access point. So this system will be very easy to maintenance and maintain. Not to mention it's a smooth interior pipe, so it's going to flow debris, anything that gets in there, a lot more efficiently. Now, as you can see here, we do like to dry fit and check before we start to prime and solvent weld. You always want to do this whenever you're working with PVC pipe, because you don't want to glue something together and then find out that it's wrong later, and then you have to cut it out, use a coupling, or just you have to abandon that fitting completely, and then you just lost a fitting, and that's a waste of money and time. So I would recommend dry fitting before you solvent weld everything together. So you can see here we have our clean out T and one of our 45 solvent welded together, but our other 45 here, that one is dry fitted on, and we're going to connect that first before we solvent weld it, because we want to make sure that we have the proper angle on that 45. Because you remember, this entire line is sloped at 1%. So that 45 is going to have to be twisted ever so slightly to be able to get that slope. So you want to make sure that you don't just solvent weld everything together without checking that. Once you've checked it and you have your slope correct, you can go ahead and then solvent weld it together. Now, a lot of times what we will also do is we will draw on the fitting with a marker. We will draw a line when it's dry fitted and the angle and everything is correct. And that way we know exactly where that fitting is going to be placed on when we do solvent cement it together. So that is another little trick that we like to do. That way we know everything is correct. So the final step is going to be the discharge end here. So the discharge end, we are going to use a sanitary T facing down. That way the water can all drain out of the system efficiently. Now, on a heavy rain and when it's raining a lot, the water is going to be coming up and out of the pop-up emitter. But once the rain stops, or if it's a very light rain like a drizzle, that water will just be flowing down into the ground. So we go ahead and we dig the discharge end out a little bit deeper, and we put a little extension in the bottom of that, and then we line it with a geotextile filter fabric, and we put stone in the bottom. So I will show that here in a minute once I get to the end of the discharge. But as you can see, we're going through and we're bedding the pipe in with the dirt, and we're checking the level, making sure that we still have our 1% slope and nothing changed as we were working. Now, you will hear that, you know, when you install PVC pipe, you have to put stone underneath the pipe and bed it so it doesn't sink or sag over time. And that is true, but that's true when it's a system that's much deeper in the ground than this. Whenever you're doing yard drainage, you're not going, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 20 feet deep like you would on large sanitary mains. So you really don't need the stone underneath the pipe. Now, granted, you could do that. It's not a bad idea. It's not going to hurt anything, of course. But as long as you lay that pipe in a flat bottom trench and you have 1% slope on that pipe, and then you bed the pipe in, it's going to be fine. It's yard drainage. So one of the last things we're going to do here is mix up some type S mortar. This is underground utility mortar. It's made for storm drainage applications, any kind of utilities that are underground that need mortar. This is the type of mortar you want to use. It's a type S mortar. And we're going to put that around our catch basin connections here, as well as where we capped off the two already pre-drilled holes that these catch basins come with. We're going to put the mortar around those as well to make a solid connection. So that's going to ensure that sediment doesn't find its way into the basin at any of those connections points, and it is all sealed up. Now for our clean out, we went ahead and we put a riser on the clean out, and we bring it up past grade pretty significantly here. And we don't glue the clean out cap on though. We leave the clean out cap and that fitting just pressed on there. That way, once they get finished with the grade of the ground here and they put the sod on, then they can go back and they can cut that riser to however high they want it and then glue the cap on. So as you can see, we have our geotextile filter fabric at the bottom of our discharge end here. We have some pea stone. That way it helps the water perk through the ground more efficiently. And we will simply just wrap that geotextile fabric up and then bury that area up. All right, guys, well, that just about does it for this install. And if you gain some knowledge from watching it, give us a thumbs up. It really supports us. It supports the channel. We're trying to get as much information out there as possible for the average homeowner and DIYer that's going to do their own yard drainage. And if you need any yard drainage in the Tampa Bay area, downspout drains, French drains, channel drains, give Stormwater Drainage Solutions a call at 813-614-3456. We can come out there, assess the situation, and design a system that fits your needs. We got you covered.